Hi everyone, welcome back. This weekend we've got a whole bundle of projects to do on the farm. The first one we're starting with this morning is we've got a new loading ramp for our sheep yards. The loading ramp that I had was quite dodgy and didn't work particularly well. And it was always hard, it was a bit narrow and it was always hard to get the sheep up it. This is actually a cattle loading ramp. It's a big heavy thing and it's quite a lot bigger than I actually need it to be, but it was the right price. So we're going to be using this for our sheep loading ramp. Now at the moment it's about 200 millimeters too high down this end to line up with the tray of the ute, but it was, where it was set up before, it was buried into the ground about 200 millimeters as well. So we're going to work out exactly where we need this, and then we're going to dig a couple of spots for it to sit down into so that it will be the right height. At the moment in our sheep yards, we've got a gate here which I've been using to let the sheep out back into the paddock, one of the paddocks. We've got our very temporary yard here, which is actually the yard where they all come into first. When I was building the rest of the yards, I didn't really know how big to make this, so I just had it made it temporary, and now we're going to do a little bit more work to make it a bit more permanent. So we're going to use cattle panels for this bit because I've got some. The lambs do get between these bars, so I'll need to put some weld mesh on it eventually like this. We're going to put a gate here to allow me to bring the sheep from this yard back into the beginning yard, and then I can run them through the drafting race again. We're going to put a swinging gate here, which is going to allow me to run sheep out this gate and out into the paddock. And then straight ahead down here we're going to put the loading ramp. So I've got a few panels to set up just to get the right length, and we'll see how we go from there. The next little job we've got to do this afternoon, this is the neighbour's Massey Ferguson Massey 65, and it's had a leaking fuel pump for quite some time, but it's got pretty bad, so we're just going to change the fuel pump on this. These are pretty easy to do. There's a pipe here, there's a pipe here, there's 2 bolts down here, and then we've got to bleed the injector system. You can get kits for these pumps to rebuild them. They're about $20, $25, $30 each, which isn't too bad. You can also buy a brand new pump ready to go for, I think this was about $60. So by the time I have spent an hour getting the old one off, cleaning it up and rebuilding it, it's easier just to bung on a new one, I hope. So we're going to whip this off now. The first thing we've got to do, remember to do, is to turn the fuel tap off. That's just up under here. Next we're going to undo this main fuel line that goes into the pump on this side. We're going to undo this slightly dodgy fitting over here. Then there's 2 7/16 bolts in here. And there's 2 spring washers in here that we're possibly going to drop, and then that should just come off. Now, when these pumps start leaking, there's a little hole underneath here that starts leaking fuel out, so that's why you can see it's been running down all over here. What doesn't run out the hole in the bottom here runs down here and gets mixed up in the sump and thins out your sump oil. Okay, so this is the new fuel pump. It looks identical to the old ones. The bits where they differ are these levers here often. Sometimes you're going to have to pull them apart and swap the levers over when you get a new one. But this looks like it should go straight on. So I'm just going to clean up this old gasket. There we go. That just comes off and is nice and clean. Okay, we're ready to put it back together now. I'm just going to use a bit of this aeroplane glue on the gasket just to make it seal a little bit better. A little puddle of oil just inside here that just keeps leaking out. This gasket glue works really well on paper gaskets. Okay, 2 spring washers go back on, and the 2 nuts. It's important to make sure this back fuel line sits into the pump where it needs to go as well when you're assembling it. There's not a lot of room to get it in later on. That sounds like that's working. Now this is the inlet from the tank, comes through the glass bowl before it goes through the pump. Okay, so now we've got the fuel pump all hooked up and the fuel tap on. The first thing we're going to do is just loosen this glass bowl off. I'm not sure if I can do this one-handed. No, can't do it one-handed. So we just need to loosen this a little bit, and this will allow the diesel to fill this bowl up, and it just helps get some of the air out of the system before we start bleeding the rest of it. So the fuel, it's only the pump that really has air in it at this point. Now that's full, we'll just do that up. And I have done this one back here up tight. I'm just going to loosen this one off a little bit. And when we start pumping, it should push all the air out there instead of pushing it right down to the injector pump. Now this pipe here is going to have a little tiny bit of air in it, but this way we've got most of the air out before we start trying to bleed it. So I'll just do this one up. There's still a little bit of air in there that I can see coming out. Okay, so now we've got all the air out of the pump, we're going to go around to the other side. Now, if we're bleeding the system all the way through, this is the injector pump here, and there's two bleed nipples here. It's quite important to bleed both of these until there's no air in them. I normally take the top one out and bleed that one first because it has the highest volume of fuel that comes through. I take that right out to do it. I then put it back in finger tight and bleed the bottom one. You will get more air out through the bottom one, and then finish with the top one again. Do the top one again, and that gets most of the air out of your system. Because we haven't run this tractor out of fuel, we haven't changed filters or anything, I'm going to undo this pipe here on the filter, and just bleed it to that point there, and that should should get the tractor running without any issues at all. Saves me wasting quite so much fuel. Otherwise we've got to pump enough fuel to get from the pump all the way through these lines, through these two filters and down to the pump, and that's quite a lot of fuel that we're wasting. So I'm just going to undo this and bleed it here. So I've loosened that off. I'm going to go around the other side. It's much easier if you've got two people to do this. Then we just pump on here, and we can hear when this is the little primer pump, hand pump lever here. So we just pump on here. We can hear the air coming out, but it is useful if you've got somebody else on the other side just to watch and make sure that when the air's finished coming out, they can do the things up for you. The front end loader's got an electric fuel pump on it, and it just makes this job so easy. Okay, that sounds like it's running clear now, so we just go back round the other side, do this up again, and the tractor should be good to go. Our next job for today is just to clean up this little area here. We've got this sort of little circle of trees here. There's a little flat spot down the bottom here. It's fairly well sheltered. And we're going to open this area up, or we're hoping to open this area up as a campsite. There's a website called HipCamp that lists campsites on farms for people who just want to get out of the city and enjoy a bit of peace and quiet. So yeah, we've got a little bit to do to clean this up, but we're hoping to have this up and listed for the April school holidays. Yeah, it's a nice little spot here. We've been wondering for a while what to do with it. We were going to originally put an orchard in here. We were also wondering about building a house in here, but it's a little bit close to our boundary fence. This is the neighbour's place just over here. But I think it'll make a really nice little campsite, and hopefully by winter we will have had a chance to build a fire pit and get a picnic table and a few other things like that for it here too. Well, I think this is cleaned up quite nicely, and I think this will make a nice little campsite. There's still a bit more work to do, a bit more cleaning up to do, but there's quite a nice spot down here to camp in. So yeah, time to get on with the next job for the day. The last job I've got to do this weekend is a quick service on Jess's car. So just an oil change today, and there's a couple of other little jobs I've got to do on it. I know this video has been a little bit different from most of the videos I do. I just thought I'd stop and show you what a weekend looks like on the farm, in between doing all the farm work and the other things. There's a whole bundle of other jobs. There's probably about 20 other jobs I've done this weekend as well that didn't end up getting videoed because they were just little short bits and pieces. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video. Next week we'll get back onto some tractor maintenance to get ready for seeding, which is coming up awfully soon. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope to see you again next time. Bye!